Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here, and we're back with our weekly Q&A. This is Season 7, Episode 5, and we normally mention something at the beginning of this episode, or every episode, which is that you can access this either on YouTube or in podcast format. But this week, to switch it up, I'm not going to tell you where you can find it in podcast format. If you want it so bad, you can find it yourself. And I'm sure if you care enough about this that you want to find it in podcast format, you already know. But if this is the first time you're paying proper attention to this intro, I don't know. It's a mystery.
100 episodes later.
Figure it out. Don't listen on whatever format you want, but you're going to have to work for it a little bit if you want to find it on podcast today. Getting into our first question comes from Nothing Better to Do. There's an underscore in between to and do. I don't think that's relevant particularly, but no. The person who dropped something this time was you.
Yes, it was. Not my
there we go. Finally. And their question is as follows. Hey, BDCKR, you can get... Or I guess this is a comment.
Yes.
This is why we had more letters.
There's a question in there somewhere.
Oh, is there? Oh, yeah. Well, is the question to include it in a recap? I think that's just a request.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and the semantics aren't supposed to matter. That's why we dropped all the extra letters. But as you can see, the streamlining process has been a little rough on us. Just emotionally. They say, hey BDCKR, you can get Tantu Totem from Nth Metal Pro packs and Nth Metal Ultimate packs, so Tantu Totem is possible to get even if the online battle cuts out Tantu Totem, and the process is even faster if you just do the Survivor Reset glitch. It's a bit time consuming, but it's possible. If you're even reading this comment, can you please include this in a recap? It's pretty important for people to get essential items like Tantu Totem, so I think the people should be informed. If you're reading this, thanks for reading, LOL.
Okay, so it's actually more interesting than it looks. Okay, so it alludes to a couple things. One is the refund glitch, right? I guess it's linked in our current playlist. It's been working forever. It's more of an Android thing, which is interesting because it has to do with the fact that Android lets you do more, even when you don't root a phone, so that you can clear app data, which I think Apple doesn't let you. And the way people do this
is uninstall and reinstall,
which is, I guess, really expensive from a data point of view if you're not doing it over Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Well, it's big from a data point of view. It's more than a gig, right? It's like 1.3?
Yeah. And considering our plans have 1 gig of data a month...
Yeah, we would not be able to do it from data.
So there's a bunch of math behind it. So maybe if I can just do my math kind of thing, I'm going to do a bit of math.
Napkin math.
It's not napkin math. Napkin math, because I actually went into a little bit more trouble, and I like that. There's this really cool concept that's a non-intuitive way of thinking about things that I think if you've done math long enough, it becomes so obvious it's almost intuitive. All right, so I'm sort of explaining before I even get to it. There are 2 main packs where there's a chance of epic gear. There's the 800 Nth Metal Ultimate pack, where there's a 5% chance of epic gear, which is 1 in 20. Mm-hmm. There is a 400 Nth Metal Pro pack, which has a 2% chance of epic gear, 1 in 50. And the 200 Nth Metal one, which has no epic gear. So that's the other thing about their language, right? Which is funny. In almost every other thing that they do, Ultimate is better. Epic is not the best. In this case, they started off talking about legendary gears, and I think that's what they mean by epic.
Yeah.
Where they talk about that's the highest level. It's the gears that are 4.5 stars. So it goes epic, rare, uncommon, and common, right? Mm-hmm. And so the next sort of piece of information that you need to get into what we're talking about is that there are 31 legendary gear pieces. And I'll wait and see if we got that wrong, because it's a lot to count, but I think we've got the 12 from survivor mode.
Yeah. And
we've got another 19 from multiplayer online. Should we run through it really quickly?
I don't know. It's your call.
All right, so hold on. So 3 Fourth World gear set, 3 League of Assassins gear set, 3 LexCorp gear sets, Suicide Squad companion gear set. So that's the survivor stuff, 12.
Yeah.
Batmobile, gauntlets, Soul Taker sword, Razalgul scimitar, and that's actually not multiplayer. That one is from the gear locker. Sorry. Tantu Totem, Master's Death Cart, Ibis Stick, Claw of Horus, Quake Engine, Riddler's Staff, Scarecrow's Ventilator Mask, Overpowered Super, Necron's Scythe, Mother Box. You see how I deliberately pronounce Scythe so I don't screw it up every time?
Yeah.
Heart of Darkness, Cloak of Destiny, Did I say Cloak of Destiny twice? I didn't. Brandish Ninjato.
I think you still might be pronouncing it. Say it again.
Brandish Ninjato.
No.
Cloak of Destiny.
No. You say
Necron's
it.
Scythe.
It's Scythe, right?
Scythe.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay, so I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it wrong. Okay. I said Astral Harness, Batman Ninja Helmet. So that's 31 Legendary Gear years. If you want one specific piece of gear out of 31, so we're talking specifically about Tantu Totem, what's the chance that you get it? So this is that little bit of math that when I first realized this, and I'm sure, I mean, lots of people know this already because either they've been taught or they figured it out on their own. But to me, when I first realized this, I thought, man, it's really clever. It tells you how important it is to conceptualize a problem before you can actually solve it. And I mean, I learned this a long time ago, but what you want to do first, something that you can actually calculate properly, is what's your chance of not getting it. And then with each successive go, you don't just figure out what your chances of getting it because the chance keeps on increasing. You actually deduct that from 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I did this in a spreadsheet so I could do the number in sequence and I could calculate it. So in order to get to about a 50% chance of your legendary gear being Tantu Totem, is if somewhere just after your 21st legendary gear and before your 22nd, your chance of getting one of those being Tantu Totem is about 50%.
Okay, and is that on the 800 nth metal or the 400 nth metal pack?
It is on either, because it's whatever the nth metal pack, right? Not all of them are gears. So it's that when you get a gear, you need to get about 21 and then some in order to have a half a chance. It just means that the 800s, you'll get faster your 21st gear in the pack, and it'll take you 2.5 times as long to get to your 21st pack in the 400th pack.
Oh, so you're saying that number, like 21st or 22nd legendary gear,
right,
is that
right
is being Tantu Totem, and then you have to consider the chance of even getting one in the pack in the first place.
So that's why the interesting thing, 21 doesn't seem like a lot, but on average it's going to take you 20 packs of the 800, the ultimate pack, or 50 packs of the pro pack in order to get one piece of gear.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
So on average, again, we can't say for sure because maybe you get lucky, maybe you get less lucky. It means on average it takes more than 400 of the pro pack. That's 320,000 pieces of nth metal. And that's more than 1,000 of the 400 nth metal pro pack. And that's 400,000 pieces of nth metal.
Wow.
So it flips it. So we've talked about how the pro pack is better for getting a metal character because on the average cost of nth metal per character that you get is actually less. But when you talk about the gear, it is significantly more. So like I said, if you're lucky, you get it in fewer than the 400 or the 1,000 packs, and you spend less than the 320,000 pieces. But if you're unlucky, it's going to take a bunch more.
That's pretty absurd.
And keep in mind too, right? So we did a video. Do you remember that, of opening 100 of the ultimate nth metal packs?
Oh yeah, I do.
It was on a hacked account. Now I can't remember how long it took to do it in real time, but in that video we had to speed things up, I think, to 4 times speed, and it's still a 10-minute video.
Wow.
So. There's regular speed at the beginning and the end, so I'm guessing it probably takes at least a half hour to do just 100.
So that would be 2 hours of just opening packs on average.
Never mind accumulating
earning it, which would take orders of magnitude time more.
Right, and if you were going to use the refund glitch to just do it and then redo it and then redo it, I guess it would depend on how many packs you open before you do a refund. And the more often you do a refund, because you don't have enough nth metal,
that's true,
the longer it takes.
So it would be an average of 2 hours plus the time it takes for you to reset. Right.
Unless, I mean, again, I was going to say unless you've already got the nth metal, but how likely is that?
Yeah.
And I don't want to say I'm entirely frustrated, but what I'm really not impressed by are the people that say, well, there are people that are whales and spend that kind of money. And, I mean, there's at some point when something is really unlikely, it's pretty much effectively not happening.
Yeah.
So listen, you got a whale. I understand. Some people spend money. I can understand hundreds. I can understand a few thousand. But when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars on a game that's, let's face it, it's been on its last legs for a while. I don't really want to admit it because I still enjoy playing it. But the fact that there hasn't been an update in more than a year is not a great sign. And so, realistically, if you've played enough to get that much nth metal, there's a good chance that you were been playing for the last year and got Tantu Totem already. So somebody who's got Tantu Totem probably was playing, and somebody who needs Tantu Totem is not going to be able to...
They're not going to have the resources for it through this method.
And they won't want to be spending that kind of money for it.
Or time.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess if there were anything that would be worth doing it for, this would probably be the closest, because I think it hasn't changed much. Tantu Totem right now is probably the single most important piece of gear in the game, and I don't even know if there's any qualifier. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it is the most important piece of gear in the game.
For sure.
Yeah.
So there we go. And our next question, or set of questions, I should say, and this was great for anybody who was looking for more Injustice stuff.
Right.
And even a little bit of non-Injustice stuff. But Stelmaria.
I think so. I think they told us how to pronounce the name one time, and I feel like it was...
And I've probably done it incorrectly.
I feel like I remember when reading it in my mind, when I saw the name, the Stelmaria, the Maria part sort of separates itself just because we were so used to seeing it. But then when I when I read the pronunciation, it made me think, oh, so it's not part of... That's all.
Stelmaria we'll go with.
Yeah.
Okay. Either way, they've asked a bunch of wonderful questions, and
helping us out here.
So we'll maybe
pause
say them
after
all.
Each one?
Or do you want to pause after?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we'll say, hi guys, here are a few Injustice-based questions. My account is bugged, and I cannot get Regime Green Lantern. Would animated Harley Quinn be a good substitute, as she has power gen and also damage increase?
All right, so that's the first question.
Yeah.
I think what's not so obvious, I guess if you can't get Regime Green Lantern, there's not anybody who's quite as good in the same way. And some people would argue that animated Harley Quinn is better because she gives slightly lower power gen, but a bunch of damage boost, especially to Joker characters. My argument against that is that the damage boost is not nearly as good as you think it is. It's good because it boosts damage only. So you know how when you play an offensive team, it's good to actually be more not balanced, but more unbalanced towards your damage stat, and less towards your health. So that is good, but it also means that you're matched against tougher characters. So you lose at, and I guess the context is, I'm always thinking about MP. I mean, definitely in offline play, having animated Harley Quinn is probably an advantage. Yeah. But when you get matched against tougher opponents because of that one bit of passive, I tend to ignore those kind of things. So if somebody boosts health, like Crypto Lex Luthor. Yeah. I think, I could do without. I'd actually rather not have his
passive.
Right. Yeah. And the reason why I guess you can't get Raging Green Lantern, obviously it's a silver character in the store. Your account is corrupted. I think what we learned... Oh, there was a glitch. Remember the... All right, so they...
Oh, the overselling glitch?
The overselling glitch that they used to call the death glitch. So somebody used to call it the death glitch because it meant you would lose the character. And functionally it happens when you oversell the character, because what's happening in it, based on how it looks, is that you are selling more than your last copy. Yeah. And what happens is that Am I turning it up or down? What happens is that...
You're trying to adjust the sounds of the Discord notifications.
Yeah, right? I know. Now I think I just janked it up higher. Okay. So what happens is that your game thinks that character, you have less than 0 copies of it. Yeah. So when it gives it to you, when you buy it, when you get a single copy, it crashes out. It gives you
know what to do with that. Yeah.
Right. So if, let's say it was a daily bonus reward, that's when it crashes, like it goes into loop.
Yeah, and it permanently locks you out of your account. Right.
But if you try to buy it, it just refunds your credits, and it takes it away from account because it gets into some sort of logic loop where it says, well, you should have one more character, but instead of having one more character, you still have less than one character.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for whatever reason.
Right. And I should point out that if that's happening to you, the only way you can really fix that is by getting a hacker to fix that line of or lines of code.
What's interesting, and it's not relevant now, but if they had done that on purpose, you would have been able to have people not have access to characters before they came out. You know what I mean? Because people have been able to hack as soon as a hit character came out, even before they were able to get them.
Right.
People were able to hack that. There was a time where they were banning them in online multiplayer. But it's interesting that through an exploit, you can get to that state. And that would have actually prevented people from having any non-playable characters. That would have helped with the breakthrough dark side that people were hacking into their account.
Right.
And it also would have prevented hackers from getting anything before other players.
Right.
It's interesting that they never took advantage of that, because it almost seems like that would be, useful.
Yeah. Did we finish? One other point I want to make about Raging Green Lantern, even though it says his power boot gen is only I think 25%, functionally it always seems like it makes a bigger difference than Harley Quinn's.
Yeah.
And the difference is, if it's only 5%, it shouldn't be so noticeable, but it's like that threshold we were talking about in games where when you boost a stat just enough that it makes a difference, then you notice it. If you boost it by whatever percentage, but it still takes you as many hits to knock out somebody, or just the fights are just as long, it doesn't help. But I've always found that Regime Green Lantern, and maybe that's a function of Harley Quinn matching up against tougher characters, but it always seemed like Regime Green Lantern made a bigger difference in fights.
Yeah.
And that they were significantly easier with Regime Green Lantern than if you stuck in animated Harley Quinn.
So there we go. Our second question from Stelmaria here is probably a little bit quick to answer because we have talked about it so much earlier.
Right.
But this is, does the 400th pack give gear such as Ibis Stick and Tantu Totem as being lazy when they were online rewards?
So, I mean, the qualified answer is yes. So there's a second part of that thing about the legendary gears in the pack.
Yeah.
Is that because there are so many legendary gears and they come so infrequently in either of the nth metal packs, in theory, I guess any of those gears could be there.
Yeah.
But I don't know that anybody's tested enough or done enough documentation of the data to be able to say definitively that any single piece of gears there. I mean, we had the pack. I can tell you, I think Tantu Totem happened to be one of the gears that we opened, so I can say for sure Tantu Totem is. I don't know if Ibis Stick is. Or it was. Oh, that's true too. They can always make adjustments, right?
Yeah. So theoretically, yes. Practically, we don't know. And practically, will you be able to get it from that pack? Also, probably not. The good news is that the more packs that you want, the more gear that you want, the more likely that you get any one of the gear that you want. With fewer packs opened, and it's still a lot, but it's
Right. I mean, the good news is because Stelmaria wants one of two gears, or actually wants both gears. Actually, it's two different math problems. If you only want one of them, you're probably gonna get one of them after only about 500. only 500 nth metal packs, which is what
500 of which one?
500 of the 400 nth metal pro pack. That's only 200,000 nth metal.
Wow.
Pieces.
A bargain.
But so that's instead of 1,000. However, the bad news is it's going to take you more than 1,000 packs on average to get both.
Yeah.
So it would have taken you about 1,000. It's going to take you more than that if you want both of them, and that has to do with the math where there's still always a small chance that you won't get the second one that you want. Right. Once you get the first one, if it's sort of totally independent, then you're still working a little bit harder to get two specific ones that you want.
So there we go. The next question, same person, says, in terms of cashing Survivor tickets, is 50 a good number to go for, or should I go higher? I've already got Enchantress and Killer Croc, so I have no need to grind out last for the next 2 weeks.
Again, that's another interesting question.
Yeah, I actually really like this one, because a lot of questions have some form of an answer, and I think this one is a lot more sort of nebulous, but it's got an answer for us. It's still something that we can talk about, right?
Yeah.
Because the short answer is that, like, a good number doesn't really mean anything. So ideally, if you have everything for this set, for whatever is currently in Survivor,
right,
in terms of gears, and that is what you're looking for, then you want to just grind up as many as you feel like.
Right.
And if you still need gear from any of the other sets, as a general rule, the more the better, right?
Right.
Where obviously it's based off how much you want to play, and there's no sort of need to go past a certain point. But
and there's actually a couple of different things in play that creates a bit of tension, right? So when you've been playing for a shorter period of time,
yeah.
I don't want to say a short period of time, because short period of time you're not going to get much, but a shorter period of time, you want the gears. There were each set,
short term.
Yeah, each set has a really great gear, right? To me, when the fourth row gear set came out, Ares was already extant, and the mace was the most interesting because of the extra splash damage on the special 2.
Yeah.
And that was the chase. That was the hardest one of the 3 to get. And when the League of Assassins gears set came out, there was one, the knives, which gives you splash damage on 1, which was unique and the most interesting.
Yeah.
And also hardest to get. So everybody's wanting to get that particular gear set. So they were using the refund glitch to get it. However, once you've got the gears, and you get the gears faster than you will get all the augmentations you want, then it becomes, okay, I actually want more augmentations. Mm-hmm. So if you're in it for the long haul, then it's get as many as you can, and potentially, I don't want to say don't reset it, but reset it less often, because you want to be able to get the crit chance and crit boost augmentations, and you get more of them the more you play. They're more common than the chase legendary gears.
Yeah, so if you need other gears eventually, bank up as many as you want / can. But if you have everything, you can just spend it. And also, if you're earlier in the game, from the sounds of it, if you're banking up 50, you're probably not so early in the game. But if you were earlier in the game, it actually makes sense to spend them out faster. Our philosophy, the 2 reasons why you bank, the first reason and the biggest one is what you've alluded to already, which is when you're trying to get something specific and you are storing a bunch so that you can open a set and then reset, instead of like opening 1 round's worth and then resetting if you don't get it on that 1 round, because that would be awful.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, I mean, especially when you're doing something like, there's certain glitches like the challenge reset that's actually okay, because what you're doing is you're still playing the game.
Yeah.
And so it's still kind of fun. But when all you're doing is resetting and cashing out, resetting and cashing out, and the cashing out takes so long, and the resetting takes so long, what you're doing is it's no longer game fun. It's just...
It's grinding. It's a little bit busy work.
It's less than grinding, because you don't even get to play. Like, grinding,
at
least, it feels like every once in a while there's something interesting that happens.
You're right. It's just busy work.
Like, what we're doing here, we're grinding through multiplayer, but it's interesting because some boring fights, but every once in a while there's something sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Like, really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get that with doing the reset. So, I mean, when we were looking for something specific, I think if you're on Android and you could just clear app data, it doesn't take as long to do the refund. So part of me feels like it's every 10 last lap tickets is worth it. And even if when I was looking for, I mean, it's been a long time since it's been the case, but even when I was looking for specific gears, if I happened to get, say, out of maybe actually not even 10, maybe 5, if I got 2 crit chance or crit boost, 2 of the 5 last lap tickets were the crit augmentations, I'd keep it even if I didn't get the gear I wanted. Just because I in my mind I realized, okay, so once I get those gears, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
And the most important thing, almost as important as gears, and then sometimes, depending on the circumstance, I'd say maybe more important, is having them crit chance maxed and crit boost maxed to make your characters useful. We did some videos on that too. I mean, if you want to look, I part of me feels like I'm with a 40-minute video, I'm gonna have trouble remembering where in the video this is to put a link for it.
Yeah.
But we did show some plain vanilla teams with not a lot of gear or no gear, plus max crit chance and crit boost augmentations, and they did pretty well.
That was a while ago. Yeah, because that was when it was early days where we were like, this is actually as good as gear.
Yeah.
It's like a hidden, like, 1 or 2 gear slots almost worth of potential, and it has synergy with gear.
Right, and because it's crit chance, it doesn't actually change your matchups. So when you have damage that's across the board, and when I say across the board, I mean for basic and special damage,
Yeah.
or boosted health, that changes your matchups. It makes the teams you're fighting harder. But if you only got boosted basic damage, that doesn't, because your specials aren't boosted, or you only got boosted specials because your basics aren't, then you don't get worse matchups. And that's how crit works too, where because you're not critting every time, and the way you can really tell is because the fights just get ridiculously easy. The difference between a non-crit augmented team and a crit augmented team. Yeah.
So there we go. We have another question. Same person. In terms of building a back row prime, what gear should I give her? I want to capitalize on her second move. I don't know why I said much. I interpreted that very loosely. And I will most likely put Cloak of Destiny on my Luchador Bane once I get it. I've been really slacking on online, LOL.
All right, so this is an interesting thing because her special 2 is not her feature. Right? Like, it's what really makes back row... I mean, alright, so back row prime would be good already if she only had the power bar. We've talked about, I think, recently in the recap, because despite having really low stats, she is still a good character to have in the current meta when you're fighting the multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
But her other thing is really tied into her special 1, because the first hit of her special 1 stuns, it registers with the cloak to boost damage, and because the damage on her special 1 is back end loaded, it does a lot of damage. And with the League of Assassins Knives, before the League of Assassins Knives, it didn't matter so much. It was more just for show to do huge amounts of damage, because really, after that first hit, what good is it going to do you, right? And if anything at that time, the other back rows who had multi-hit special ones, and when I say multi, I mean like more than the 2 hits, like the stun and the hit, they were actually better, because then they could knock out the rest of a person if they revived, which back row couldn't. But then it flipped when League of Assassins Knives came out, because that second hit, if it did a huge amount of damage, you'd get the benefit of splashing the other opponent's teammates with 50% of that damage each.
Yeah, because it's a special 1, the revives don't matter as much, right?
Yeah.
If it was a special 2, I can imagine actually it still being more important to potentially kill somebody if they revive, just because special 2 is a lot more of an investment, and then it's more important to be able to get the Tantu Totem power back than it is to
You're losing
splash.
2 bars. You're losing 2 bars
exactly.
if you don't get the power
But because
back.
it's a special 1, it's easy enough that I think you'd rather do the splash damage than you would guarantee a knockout.
Right, for sure. So where was I going with that? So Stelmaria was thinking of doing special 2. So that's interesting because, all right, so the Luchador Bane's problem is he does his stun on tag in.
Yeah.
Which means that if he's last man standing, he's meat, because he's not stunning anybody anymore. He doesn't have anything built in. And there's a small chance that when he tags in, he doesn't stun.
Yeah, so it's slightly less consistent and with a chance of getting...
Right. Because Batgirl,
kneecap.
If she, as long as you time it right so that her special 1 is unblocked, you do it every time. Which is why it was so important, I think, when Necron's Scythe came out, because now that was the second gear that boosted stun damage.
And then all of a sudden you can have a stun team, like a stun special team.
Right. So I know that there were teams before, I think we might have even done one, where Luchador Bane was the special 1 specialist, only because Luchador Bane, his special 1 is just so spectacular when he does it.
Yeah.
And there weren't many counters, or at the time, at one point there might not have been, there was Batman Beyond, not the animated one, but the regular one. I think he's immune to stun. And I think the Red Sun Green Lantern was pretty early, so they were immune to stun, but most people were not. So if that was how you were loaded out, then you were in real trouble, because, like I said, Luchador Bane is interesting, but when he doesn't stun, it really messes up the team, or at least it messes up the fight, where you don't have much in the way of options. So the only way Batgirl at Prime, I think, hits above her weight is if she's the special 1 specialist. But you know what? They can both be Special 1 specialists.
Yeah.
And I think... So did they mention Cloak of Destiny on Lucifer Bane?
Yeah.
So it becomes an issue because there's no 2 pieces of gear that give splash damage on Special 1. Then it's a matter of figuring out who gets that. But then they both can do that. And they actually are... Batgirl's just, I think, way more effective as a Special 1. Because let's say she doesn't have a stun booster and she's doing Special 2 instead. I think you could probably get more damage out of her Special 1.
Yeah.
Than you would out of her Special 2, and it only costs you 1 bar of power. Even if there was no splash damage, it would still be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So
your recommendation is...
Don't capitalize on her Special 2.
Necron Scythe, though, on her. And then Cloak of Destiny on Bane.
I'm trying to think. It doesn't really matter. I guess it depends. So the secondary issue then is what are you going to do for power if you're going to... If you think you're going to just get your Special 1 every time and not have to worry about it, or if you think if you're going to use any of the power gen, like so Stelmari doesn't have Tantu Totem.
Yeah.
If you're using Master's Death Cart, one thing to keep in mind, Master's Death Cart will not disable, but what's the word I'm looking for? A stunned opponent that gets stunned by either Luchador Bane's passive or by Cloak of Destiny.
Yeah.
The Master's Death Cart breaks it. Mm-hmm. You lose your stun. Excuse me, so you don't get your stun effect. So that's better on Batgirl because she'll get the bar of power each time she tags in, but because she generates her own stun on the special, doesn't hurt.
There we go.
So it might make sense to actually have her...
With Master Death Cart for sure.
Yeah, if you're going to put it on one of them.
Yeah. So
but you don't need it. But you don't need it because she's... she brings the bar of power. It's just really if something happens just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we also have a non-injustice question from the same person. So now for a non-injustice question for that sweet, sweet watch time. What are your opinions?
I like that.
I like this whole thing. It was a great sort of setup, and it was good in direct response to the call to action.
Yeah.
For if you want more injustice questions, ask more injustice questions. Here were a bunch of good injustice questions that were all worth talking about, right?
Yes.
And with the volume, I mean, we could have skipped some, but we didn't need to because they were all actually good enough that they were worth bringing to the table, which is great. So now for a non-injustice question for that sweet, sweet watch time. What are your opinions on the MCU movies, and which ones are your favorites? Personally, I think the most are okay, but there are a few extremely good movies such as Guardians of the Galaxy and Winter Soldier, with my personal favorite being Infinity War. And then stay safe, ANC, Abbott and Costello, and thanks for all the fish. So... now that we've reached the end, great question, and I pretty much exactly agree.
My favorite is Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
In terms of Douglas Adams content?
In terms of Thanks for All the Fish.
But that wasn't what it's from.
It is. So Thanks for All the Fish. It was the sequel.
It was Hitchhiker's Guide, wasn't it?
It was Hitchhiker's Guide, but it was the fifth book. It was one of his... I don't mean that, but I was just thinking along lines of Douglas Adams. Yeah. So it was a Douglas Adams illusion in my mind. And
Dirk Gently is my favorite fish.
Yeah, well, no, he's my favorite MCU movie. Yeah. Which is not true because it's a TV show. It's not MCU, and it's completely unrelated. But it made me think of that when
Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. That's a fun plug for anybody. It's like a cool, a little bit like weird, absurdist sort of alternate reality, or it's not even like alternate reality. It's just a reality which is different from our own, but like a fictional reality that is meant to be mostly like ours.
And what I loved about it was it had such a fun vibe.
Yeah.
Like it was goofy and weird, but not just weird for the sake of being weird. It was goofy and weird and fun.
Yeah, it was great. As it turns out, the person who adapted it for TV sucks, but the show stands on its own merits.
So this is my confession. Humor in books, especially science fiction, is such a personal thing.
Yeah.
And I'd read Douglas Adams.
Yeah.
And because I'd heard so much about, and I read it a long time ago when I heard so much about how good he was, but I just bounced off it.
And I still have not read Douglas Adams.
Yeah, it's so difficult, right? Like I think if anything, the dramatic fiction, I think, has broader appeal, and humor has so much more to do with, I think, how you're reading it, what you bring to it, that it can be difficult sometimes. Like something that's really, really good can sometimes... I'm trying to think, is there anybody else who does humor because I learned that lesson really early. So if anything, I probably have avoided humor in science fiction.
John's Galaxy.
See, that actually hit pretty good, dude.
Yeah.
It was the android stream.
Yeah.
And the fart joke at the beginning.
But he just does humor throughout, I think.
And it's I think he's even said that, right? That it's just so personal sometimes that it's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
To reach a broad audience with that. I mean, there are elements of and now this is gonna screw me up. The first Douglas Adams, the really famous one.
Hitchhiker's Guide
to Galaxy had a lot of really funny sort of jokes.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of difficulty with the sequels, and I've read somewhere that part of it was because that first one was developed as a play first before it became a book, so it had a lot more time to ripen, percolate. Yeah, so I think it was just people were saying that it's just better in a lot of ways. I mean, clearly he's really good for how good the Dirk Gently stuff was. Mm-hmm. But especially as an inspiration for the TV show. But I think what were we talking? Marvel Universe?
Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but I feel the most are okay, some are really good. I feel that exact same way, and I'm going to hear. Maybe for the first time on YouTube, maybe not, submit my sort of idea about Marvel movies and how they relate to Star Wars 2, actually. I'm going to tie it in. So,
all right, let's hear it.
In my opinion, Marvel movies are a really great spectacle. They've got a usually pretty consistent tone, and they are of sort of moderate quality. A lot of times you go in and you mostly get what you expect, pretty close to exactly. And they're cool action, big blockbusters, culturally relevant. There's going to be a lot of memes and stuff about them, and a lot of people talking about them afterwards. Right. So they have a sort of reason to see them, but in almost every case, they're held back from being sort of a top-tier movie.
Okay, so...
And it's sort of in context. And every once in a while, one comes along that's really, really good, that sort of breaks that. But most of them aren't.
So I have a few thoughts about that, because I grew up watching really crappy superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like, there was a Spider-Man, there was a Captain America, and there was a Hulk that really... Actually, the Hulk was not bad. But it was the tights, it was the special effects, it was just awful. And there was just so much pulling you out of it when you had these expectations based on a comic book of, like, really super people.
Yeah.
And in my mind, if any single one of these Marvel movies had come out on their own, they would be absolutely brilliant. The problem is that there's just too much of it. Like, that kind of spectacle has become almost commonplace in movies, and they all suffer for it, because then in order to stand out, like you're saying, more of the same, right? Like, you know what you're going to get. I will say that the most successful Marvel movies are the ones that give you something a little unexpected that's still entertaining. So I totally agree with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that was great.
Winter Soldier was not bad, but I'll tell you which one I really loved. I believe it was Ragnarok. Thor
Ragnarok was great.
Because
Taika Waititi.
Okay, so then I've got the right one. Because despite being... Is it the second or the third movie?
Third.
It was the third...
Everybody thinks the second one was sort of crappy or mediocre. Dark World.
Despite being the third Thor movie, I feel like it was the best, and it's among the best of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Because there was there was that moment where the music was playing, and then they were on the Rainbow Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And it was synchronized. It's the way Edgar Wright does that with his Baby Driver.
But also with a lot of stuff that's seen in Shaun of the Dead, too.
Oh, right. So I love the way that because I've always loved music. Like, to me, the music on soundtracks of a movie that you like is so much more powerful, because not only do you get the connection with the song itself, but then it gives you a little bit of the video sort of director's vision too, and brings a little bit of that into it. And when the extra thing on top of that is when it's synchronized so much with the action, then there's just something that's
inherently satisfying about it.
Yeah. So I loved Ragnarok way more than I expected to when I first thought about watching it.
Yeah.
Same with Guardians of the Galaxy too, because it was definitely not anything that we expected, right? It was just something so different And to me, those were for me, they were the most successful. Because all that stuff where you're doing the continuity stuff, I mean, it's interesting if it's done perfectly, but when it's not done perfectly and it's just done well, it feels like the structure of the story is limiting where you can go with it. So you knew when you had that extended universe stuff, right, where you had to tie it all together at the end, that you were going to have to come up with something, and it was going to be whoever was doing it didn't have the freedom to take it wherever they wanted, right? And I haven't seen the last Star Wars movie, but that's a criticism that I've read about it, that it was, totally passable job. They hit all the spots. It's like going on an amusement ride or some tour of a amusement park where you gotta hit the roller coaster. You gotta like certain kind of things that you have to go to, but it doesn't really. There's a satisfaction you get from being surprised, right?
Yeah.
That's easy when it's the first time around, but it gets so much harder when people already have expectations and know what they're gonna get.
Yeah, and I did say I tie it into Star Wars. My tie-in is that, to me, you see a Star Wars movie and a MCU movie for a lot of the same reasons, and I think the main difference that I actually see within the movies is that the Star Wars movies focus a lot more on the world and the sort of larger context. So, like, the world and in this case, it's the universe, right?
Right.
Whereas Marvel focuses on characters sometimes actually to the detriment of the universe that they're creating and the world building that they're doing. And I think it's easier to see what I mean about Star Wars when you think about all the iconic places from Star Wars. Like, how many places can you name in Star Wars?
Lots.
How many places can you name in the Avengers? Like,
well,
Wakanda, New York? Are like those the two?
Well, but they're different kinds of stories too, right? When you're talking about superhero stories, a lot of them, besides Wakanda, right, they're grounded in like everyday our world. What you do is you're bringing fantastic characters into it,
and so that's one way of saying how they prioritize world over story, world over characters. Sorry, but the other way is when you look at actually what people do. Where in Star Wars, the exact nature of it, depending on how much you want to know about midichlorians, right, is maybe not front and center in the story. It's not like they don't like over-explain how stuff works, but the powers are very consistent. They are limited, and they are cool, but they are not nebulous. You know what I mean? Like, what you can do with the Force makes sense. In the...
Well, okay, so...
Okay.
I mean, I guess, but...
It's a lot more limited.
That has more to do with episode 1, 2, and 3, and 7, 8, 9 doing stuff. Like, the original 4, 5, and 6, before they started trying to do that midichlorian stuff...
Yeah.
It was actually not. Like, if anything, it was the opposite, right? Like, what you're capable of seemed like it was not as defined.
But it was always limited. They never did a bunch of stuff. You know? They always had a sort of skill set, and it was sort of telekinesis and sensing sort of the flow of the world, right? And it all sort of falls within a genre, right?
Well, all right, so if you look
there's
at
some restraint.
So, because there was a huge gap between episode 6 coming out and episode 1.
Yeah.
And if you look at 4, 5, and 6 in isolation, there was never anybody that was really in their prime and skilled and good. So you had Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was powerful, but...
very old.
Who else? Yoda was ready to have a coronary. And then you had Luke, who was supposed to be so powerful in the Force, but he was untrained and unskilled. So, well, maybe I'm wrong. So the closest you get would be Darth Vader, but Darth Vader was, like, physically, he needed, like, a life... Yeah, he needed a life support suit, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that at that point, the potential of the Force, we didn't really see the full potential because the only people we saw were people who were either... on the sort of downhill part of...
They're either geriatric.
Or they were, like, novices.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that it's changed a lot because your world, the world that you grew up in, has all the, like, episode 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, and the world that I grew up with, whereas Star Wars was 1977, and the last episode was 83. When did the first one, Attack of the Clones? 90... I want to say 90-something. So there was a good 20 years, where Star Wars was really like the whole idea of this Order of the Jedi that had the power of the Force behind it.
Yeah.
That had been so much better and had been crippled, and this was sort of
what was left.
What was the remnants of it.
Either way, what you show on screen, and I think that's in stark contrast to what the MCU shows, which is a huge sort of disregard for consistency of power sets. What do people do? And there's a lot of examples of it, right? But I think the most prominent one is Tony Stark, and I think they've moved to become less and less grounded since the beginning, where in the first Iron Man movie, the first suit that he makes, its main job is to be like bulletproof and to not make his heart give out. Yeah,
right.
Like the two things that it does is make him not die, and then make him not die with metal.
It's like a ventilator. It's like he's got COVID-19 and he needed a ventilator that he could walk around in. But all comic books I think suffer from that, because there's this huge range. It's like Batman versus Superman, right? Like, how do you make that work? Because on the one hand, I mean, this is where Marvel is really strong, where they make their characters more relatable and human. At least the most successful ones from, I think, the 60s, right? That Stan Lee was really known for. Because when you've got like a god like Superman, how do you make a story interesting if he's invulnerable? I mean, that's why they stuck in Mr. Mxyzptlk with the magic and kryptonite and stuff, so that there would be something more than just, well, I'm a super guy, I just do whatever I want, and I'm invulnerable to everything.
But you see sort of the progression to, in like the last movie, when he's got in Infinity War and Endgame, where he's got like nanobots. And they just make whatever.
Right.
And so his whole power is anything that has a technology theme. Like, it doesn't even really have to be necessarily tech. Like, there's that one thing, and I don't think it's ever used ever in any other Marvel movie, where a bunch of nanobots form to his left and to his right, and it forms this, like, satellite dish looking thing on him, and he shoots, like, a big beam that's all the beams combined. And I'm like, you know, in the first movie, he was in a month in a cave just to have, like, a lot of metal on him and not die.
Right.
And now you've got, like, a throwaway thing where you have this whole extra, like, satellite dish zapper thing, and it's like,
He's like Green Lantern. What he can imagine, he creates.
Yeah, and, you know, you have that with, I think, a lot of other characters, too. Like, what's Vision's powers, exactly? I don't know. What's Scarlet Witch's powers?
She's magic.
She's magic, but, like, she does a lot of stuff with it.
Hacks you.
Yeah, but it's all very sort of nebulous. And I think a single character, I think Iron Man, specifically, even by himself within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has a wider variety of things that he is capable of that show up and may be consistent and maybe entirely not consistent than all of the Jedis in all the Star Wars.
All right, I'll grant you that.
And I think that's the thing that makes it where you're really character focused. It's like, look, Iron Man's doing a cool thing. It's an awesome fight. But it's like, where's this coming from? How did you, like, who's developing the 50,000 configurations for your nanobots to take?
But I think it's partly a function of where they come from, their sort of source material, right? Yeah. Like, because the comic universe is so rich and it's so varied,
and there's like reboots and iterations,
they're bringing stuff together, as opposed to the Star Wars universe, where you had this one sort of these three canonical movies, and everybody was all the fan stuff is branching out from that. Like, the Star Wars universe is branching out from that, as opposed to like people just doing a million things and bringing it together universe. And the fact that the Marvel universe is really coming of age in a time where the special effects let you create these spectacles, then it becomes sort of part of the language of the movie that you actually have to have spectacle every time, and that's part of why they have such sort of diverse and visually stunning kind of powers, independent of how powerful they are.
So there we go. So that's some of the stuff. I do have, you mentioned your favorite Marvel movies. I think we have a little bit of time for mine. I really liked Thor Ragnarok was great. I think Infinity War, I didn't like Infinity War that much. I liked Endgame a lot. Or wait, which one was the last one?
Endgame.
Yeah, I liked Endgame a lot. I actually did not like Infinity War very much.
I liked the first Avengers movie.
The first one was great. Yeah. I think here's one movie that I really liked the idea and the execution, but in a funny anecdote about it. I really liked Black Panther. And I like Black Panther for the richness of the villain.
Right.
Where his motivations were entirely understandable.
Right.
He did a couple things that felt a little bit out of character just in terms of raw dickishness.
Right.
But they were all sort of ultimately like a flawed individual. And what I liked most about it was that he was right. What he wanted to do is actually the end result is that the heroes adopt what he wants to do, minus arming a bunch of people.
Right.
Minus giving away firearms and saying, hey, go revolutionize. Right? Everything that the villain wanted was actually a thing that the people who won decided to move towards.
Right.
And I think that's great because that's a really interesting thing. And when you've got a character, right, when the whole point is that he is black and grew up surrounded by violence, where you've got a character who is parsing the world, like he was like his whole thing. I guess this is spoilers for Black Panther, but
spoiler alert.
But when his whole thing is that he grew up, in a bad living situation because the people of Wakanda sort of just said protect our own and you don't count as one of our own, right? Where they're very insulated. Where he grew up in a place where there was violence and he didn't have the support. He's like, listen, I think we should support actually all black people because you can't just say that like us as a group ends at your border.
Right.
And the way that he wanted to fix it was parsed through the way that he understood, which was the environment that he'd grown up in.
Right.
Right? And I think that's great. And the anecdote about that is that I explained that minus a little bit of the spoilery part to somebody, and they said, that sounds really cool. And they watched the movie, and they said, it was a good movie. I think I enjoyed your explanation of what it did more. Because when I heard that explanation, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And they're like, and I don't think they actually explored that a lot in the movie. I think that was just a connection that was there, but like, you made. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I really like Black Panther for that.
It's the one thing that you said that really struck a chord with me was the idea that the villain was nuanced and interesting and not just, bad for the sake of being bad. Which brings me, we ran out of footage a long time ago, so you're seeing extra footage if you're watching this.
Yeah.
Brings me to the last point I want to make this week, because it feels like every week there's something that I want to say about the pandemic and how people are screwing it up, specifically Boris Johnson in the UK and Donald Trump in the US. And I feel like I miss opportunities to say stuff, but then there's always something new every week. And I want to point out to maybe fix this particular video in time is that I never want somebody to suffer, but man, if somebody's going to get COVID-19, it's not unfair. There's some poetic justice in Boris Johnson getting it for all how he was minimizing it and making it a show of shaking everybody's hands when people were supposed to be safe by avoiding contact as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one that was responsible for lots of other people following his example and not distancing properly.
And I think the other thing is that when somebody's making a point to minimize it and then they catch it and it's serious, it's bad for him, but I think that sets an example for the world.
Yeah, but if he hadn't gotten it, then all those other people who are getting sick that we don't know about would be doing it because they watched him make out like it was nothing.
Yeah, it was like, who was the NBA player who tested positive after touching of the...
Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
He was, if nothing else, he was the one that was the push for the NBA to be the leader in making the change.
Yeah, so it really sucks for when people are publicly... It sucks for anybody to get sick with it. When people are publicly making a show of disregarding safety procedures and then they do actually get sick.
Right.
If they are private figures, then it is just sad. But when they are public, they at the very least, are an opportunity for other people to realize the error of their ways.
Yes. And if I can, I'm going to be really quick about this. So the one thing that's happened this week that really pisses me off about Donald Trump, because as Canadians, it matters to us that Donald Trump last week gave an order that 3M, which produces most of the surgical masks and stuff, and a lot of personal protective equipment that's available in North America.
Yeah.
I mean, we get some from China. I don't even know what number it is, what amount it is, but when he gives an order that 3M should not send any equipment to Canada based on the Defense Protection Act, or Defense Production Act, sorry, not Protection, Defense Production Act, I think, man, he is like total...
He's screwing us over.
Right. But the flip side is that he's clearly an example of somebody who's not very competent because the production of the special paper pulp that's used in the manufacture of surgical masks comes from Canada. And it comes from a very specific cedar tree, I think, that's in BC.
So it's a little short-sighted.
Well, it's a lot because the analysis I was reading was that if any other countries retaliate, which Canada says that our Prime Minister says we're not going to do, but if any countries choose to retaliate, then the net effect on their supply of personal protective equipment will be less than if they had just allowed things to continue as is. So anyways, people need to step up and people need to figure out how they can keep on supporting a dummy like that.
Yeah. So there we go. That brings us to the end of our episode. We have some acknowledgements in order. So, first off, a quick shout out to Eliza the Captive Caton. She's not allowed to leave her home by her mother's orders. This shout out has been brought to you by the hope of one day seeing the outside world. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to everybody who is supporting us on Patreon. So that is...
Consul Peasant and Edwoon supporting us at the highest tier last word. Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, and Brandon C. supporting us on the credited level. And Chris Wolf and Scarlett NB at the gratitude level.
Yeah, so thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.